Call the roll.
Certainly, Honorable Mayor Pandeleon.
Here.
Alderman Beidler.
Here.
Alderman Morris.
Here.
Alderman Notes.
Here.
Alderman Rummel.
Here.
Alderman Preschlack.
Here.
Alderman Gashgarian.
Here.
Alderman Moreno.
Here.
Alderman Bushman.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Will you all please stand with me and recite the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First item on our agenda tonight is comments by the mayor. I'm going to hold Mike for 2 seconds here while I just mention something that's going to be coming probably before us at our March 16th meeting. Last year, Fuel Fed, a Chicago-based European car owners club, approached me regarding a regional car show event that they're interested in hosting locally here in Lake Forest this summer. It's called Zufen Group 3, and it's the Midwest's original and largest independent air-cooled Porsche festival. If you're not familiar with these cars, they're actually quite valuable. And they're interested in bringing this to Market Square. Last year it was held in Twin Lakes, Wisconsin. Prior year to that it was held in Winnetka. They would love to do this in Market Square this summer, targeting Sunday, August 9th, which is the Sunday right after Lake Forest Day, so it's a pretty quiet time of the year. They've been working directly with the city staff, and they're going to be presenting their request on our next meeting of March 16th. So I just wanted to let everybody know that that was coming, in case there were questions or thoughts, so that there were no last-minute surprises. So looking forward to learning a lot more about the event and having them. It's great, we're trying to create more excitement in town, and this would bring probably a couple of hundred people, mostly from out of town, some from the region, some from pretty far away, right here in Lake Forest for a Sunday. So we'll look forward to hearing more about that at our next meeting. Next thing I'll talk about is an update on the Deer Path and Route 41 IDOT pump station project from Mike Thomas, Director of Public Works.
An ominous picture. Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. This evening, staff would like to present to yourselves and residents at home an update on the IDOT pump station project. We are hoping that we don't see this picture this summer, but you never know. But I think it'll be short-lived. The following information. A quick project overview, a new pump station, as we talked about, at the corner of Ahwahnee and Deer Path. Some additional storm sewer along Route 41 and Deer Path underneath those two roads. Creation of two detention ponds, 17 and 18, as well as adjacent to hole number 1. An intergovernmental agreement whereby the state would give money to the city of Lake Forest to restore the golf course and the property of Ahwahnee and Deer Path. IDOT is estimating this project to be anywhere from $10 to $12 million. They would fund the entire project. In the end, they'd turn around and give us the keys and say, all yours. You maintain it, you replace it, you repair it, but they will pay for the initial cost. Challenges that we have run into, that IDOT ran into, is really this property right there at the corner of Ahwahnee and Deer Path. Late summer, IDOT last year was reviewing the documents, and they themselves became somewhat concerned that they didn't have the right to put this pump station in. So our city attorney wrote a letter November 19th of 2019 asking for clarification. Do you in fact have the right? If you do, please show us. They came back to us in December and said their attorney downstate was reviewing it in Springfield. They then came back on January 27th and they said that they would acquire the, quote, underlying fee rights to the parcel. City Council and myself then contacted them and asked for a conference call, which we went ahead and had on February 11th. that basically reiterated, we don't need you to go buy the property, but we need you to convey to the city officially that you believe you have a right, IDOT, under the current documents, property documents, to construct this pump station. They are still writing the letter. And as a result, we are working with IDOT to try and have a meeting with State Senator Julie Morrison, the mayor, and the head of Region 1, District 1, to go down and try to move things along. So we've contacted them. They are going to come back to us with a few dates, and we're hoping that that meeting will happen here in the next week or two. I contacted IDOT this morning and asked for an update as far as all this material. First of all, the railroad agreement with the UP, the freight line, they had come to terms on they need to push a storm sewer underneath that freight line. They had come to terms on the agreement. They have yet, though, received the signed agreement. They came to terms with UP back in October. So they are still waiting to receive this signed easement agreement. The good news is that the utility relocations, meaning AT&T, North Shore Gas, ComEd, Comcast, they have utilities in this area that need to be moved. They are currently applying to IDOT to receive permits to work within their right-of-way to move those utilities. The property conveyance documents, as I noted, is currently being put together by IDOT's land acquisition staff. We were told again that we would receive this 2 weeks ago, and we're still waiting for that document. And then the intergovernmental agreement, that's on their second round internally being reviewed, and that's all they could tell me today, was that they're reviewing the document. Best case scenario is that the project is put out to bid with a bid opening in September. They then will have 2 to 3 months to pass contracts. That's how long it takes them to do this. And then lo and behold, we hit December 1st, whereby IDOT is not allowed to have any construction projects. That is their own rule. December 1 to April 1, no projects. The contractor can acquire material, but cannot literally be digging and excavating. So our hope is that this meeting with IDOT officials will speed some things up. The good thing is they know that this is a very important project. They want to get it done, but this property issue reared its ugly head, and they're trying to resolve that. So until that's resolved, the project cannot be put out to bid. That is how IDOT works. They say, check all the boxes. When all the boxes are checked, then they can officially put it out to bid. That is the very quick update. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Any questions for Mike? Michelle?
Director Thomas, so the golf course will have no impact this year?
I would be very surprised if the golf course had any impact this year. I don't think this is going to start. At the earliest, it could start late fall, but the speed at which things are moving, I highly doubt it.
Is there any prep work on the golf course that we might think about in advance of December 1st or in advance of the contract?
Not so much from our standpoint, prep work. Schedule is going to be very important. We're going to have to really think through logistically as to when they're going to bring equipment on board and when they're going to start excavating these holes and the disruption that could cause to Deer Path. So not only Deer Path Golf Course, but Deer Path Road. And we're trying to push to have that done during the summer months when Deer Path Road is not as busy. That is not obviously good for Deer Path Golf Course, and that's the challenge we have. We're going to have to make a decision on that. But no, there's nothing. I've spoken with Vince a couple times and Chuck, and I think we're hoping the golf course has a good year
So if construction does start April 1st,
next year.
how long will it take, and do we have a plan for the impact on the golf course? April 1st to May 1st, or do we have a view?
We do. We have talked through that with Sally and Vince and Chuck. The project is estimated to take anywhere from 18 to 24 months.
Oh, I didn't.
But it's different phases. So for example, the other thing we've got to be concerned with and aware of is that they're going to need to bring Deer Path down to one lane. And when they do that, again, we want that to happen during the summer months. So scheduling this out, we are allowed to put a preferred schedule in the bid documents. We can't do that until these documents that we are receiving that are then subsequently approved by City Council, the IGA and the conveyance documents. When that is done, then we can talk about a real schedule. But yes, myself and Sally, and we have talked about how that impacts the golf course, and Sally and others might be able to speak a little bit to that.
Maybe just one quick follow-on. Will IDOT allow us any staging on the ramps? And would we even want to stage anything on the Route 41 ramps? That would,
I don't think on the ramps, but right adjacent to the bridge abutments, underneath Route 41, they will. I'm sure on the property at Awani, if they believe they've got the right to do so, they'll stage some equipment there. And again, it depends upon when these ponds are going to be excavated, because between the two ponds will be a 36-inch storm sewer, gravity-fed storm sewer. So once the pond hits a certain elevation at 17, 18, by gravity, goes to the pond adjacent to number one. When that hits a certain elevation, water comes out to Deer Path Road, goes to the creek. And that's how it's all connected. But we haven't, that is something that in the pre-construction meeting, we'll get into details about staging.
so the pond next to number one, when that tops off, does it flow south? The water, excess water flows south away from the homes across the creek?
It will, correct. So number one fairway will flood, yes. If the creek comes up to the elevation where the storm sewer can no longer drain into the creek, then the pond will back up and number one fairway will go underwater, yes.
Alderman Rommel?
Two questions. First of all, I don't recall whether the off-ramp from 41 is going to be closed. Is it closed during this?
They will, when they are closed, it'll simply be a temporary closure because they will be pushing pipe under 41 a little bit further north. But there will be times when, yes, they will need to close those, but it's temporary. It's not for a
Just
long
concerned
period
about
of
access to the
time.
hospital.
Okay. And yes, correct. And we, when working with IDOT, have told they're very well aware of hospital, golf course, schools, and how this all has to keep open and the impact it's going to have
Well,
on all
I mean, I
three.
think the number one priority has to be hospital.
Right.
Number two, I think Alderman Notes and I would be concerned where this traffic from Deer Path is going, and I think the logical place is that it will go down Wesley. Is that what we're planning?
Correct.
And in that case, I'm hoping that we will get a letter out sooner rather than later to the Wesley Road people that this is happening. They can expect additional traffic and for how long a period of time. And it's sounding to me like it may be for significant.
The other projects that we are keeping our eye on, IDOT is beginning a design at 176 and 41, that interchange.
Right.
That won't come for a while, but they're also Lake Bluff, the Village of Lake Bluff contacted us, Green Bay Road in Lake Bluff. From Lake Forest border up to 176, they want to reconstruct, and to do that, they want to send traffic our way. We said, do it, but after we're done with this project. We don't want to back up Deer Path any more than it's going to be.
Yeah, so there are just a lot of logistical issues that have
There
to
is,
be.
and we also worked with the police and fire department, obviously hand in hand in this, so they're well aware of the construction that is going to go on in that area. And yes, there is going to be a point in time where we've got to bring it down to one lane, but other than that, it will be open to get to the hospital. And when it does go down to one lane, we're gonna have to really have our logistics nailed down, whereby maybe they're working long days or something to get that open to two lanes.
Well, yeah, and the Wesley Road people, I think, would be concerned, so
Sure.
let's let
We
them
did
know.
something similar with the past summer with the beach. We contacted people on Wesley and Sheridan.
And also the McCormick Ravine.
Correct,
Right,
correct.
right.
You're right, we did the same thing.
And that was all truck traffic, so this will just be regular cars, so.
Mr. Mayor. Mike, so the owner of the parcel in question, has that been identified? So the state knows who the owner is and they're willing to sell to the state? And I'm more concerned that this project's even gonna happen than any of the logistics. I mean, is
There,
it,
and I'll let Julie Tappendorf fill in the blank there if we could.
So initially, IDOT thought they owned the property, and so we were proceeding along that we thought IDOT would just deed over the property to us. When they did their title search, they realized they don't own it in fee simple, so they don't own it, but they do have dedication rights, so right of way, just like we do for most of our roads. It's like an easement, which should be sufficient for what we're doing. But it did raise some questions about if you don't own it, you can't deed it to the city, which was what the intent was. So we had questions about what is the form of the transfer of the dedication rights, which is like an easement to us as opposed to a deed. We asked that question too, not because they're deeding the property over now, because they're not. We are going to take a jurisdictional transfer of the dedication rights. So we will now step in their shoes to have the highway rights to that parcel. But we did ask if they knew who the owner was, just for purposes of putting them on notice that this work was going to happen. So that's something we're waiting for. We're waiting for the IGA, we're waiting for the jurisdictional transfer documents, and also that was a question we had. Just, we have the right to do this on that property. This is clearly for highway purposes. It's broad enough in scope, but just to make sure if we were going to do work that we would let the owners know. But I think they do have issues with, I mean, there's a title, but locating that person has been an issue.
Other questions? So, just to put a point on it, this is a project that we were anticipating commencing construction in the spring of this year, sometime in the next 90 days. It now appears that the soonest it would start might be late fall of this year and probably not until next spring
Correct.
because of these various legal entanglements that need to be sorted out.
But the good news is it will happen at some point, which needs to
You
happen.
know, was it Casey Stengel who said it's never over till it's over? It never starts until it starts, right? So hopefully you're right, but that seems to be everybody's intention. It's just, there's some,
And IDOT
Legal
has
details.
predefined bid opening dates, actually out for the next 3 or 4 years. We can look 2 years from now and know what bid opening dates they have, but then they have a schedule where they say, if you want to have the bid opening on September 18th, everything has to be turned into Springfield by date X. So that is what everybody is pushing for, is to get all of this stuff completed and sent down to Springfield in that time period.
okay. That concludes the comments by the mayor. So next item on our agenda is comments by the city manager. So Jason?
Great. Thank you, Mayor and members of council. I'm pleased to be able to introduce two guests who are with us here tonight. First, I'd like to begin by introducing Carol Summerfield, the Executive Director of the History Center of Lake Forest and Lake Bluff. Carol is here to discuss the newest happenings going on at the History Center, including their new 20s in the 20s exhibit. And I will not steal her thunder, but I will say I did have the opportunity to tour the exhibit myself, and they really have done a tremendous job with it. For anyone who's interested in understanding how society has changed in the last 100 years, they really have done a remarkable job putting the exhibit together. So with that plug, Carol, I'm happy to turn over to you.
Thank you. All right, so we're the History Center, and I'm Carol Summerfield. And if you didn't know where we were, we now have signage. Thank you very much. In front of the museum, we put up the small stone wall and then have signs in the front and the back. And one of my favorite little anecdotal things are the number of people who jog by every day and have for a year who stop to say, I had no idea this is where you were. So they have done their job in wayfinding. People now know where we are. All right, so as Jason said, we've got an exhibit up called 20 in the 20s, and this is a year-long program that we are doing. The spring is focused on lives of young women who turned 20 in the 1920s and lives of young women who are turning 20 in this decade. In the summer, we'll be focused on prohibition and the socialization of vice, looking at alcohol limitations in the 1920s, and then looking at the partner narrative that we've got going on now with marijuana. And then in the fall, it'll be men returning from war, men returning from the military. One of the things I've really enjoyed about pulling this program together is that we've got several of the local institutions working with us. The library will be doing some books tied to these topics. Gorton will have 3 movies, The Sting, the story of Irene Castle, which, just as a little spoiler alert, Irene Castle, who was the dancer in the 1920s, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers were in the movie in the 1930s, and Irene was on set, and Irene and Ginger apparently fought like cats in a sack. So that should be a really fun lecture and movie. And then we'll do the #1 book of the 1920s, which was Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. There'll be some fun corresponding things. During the summer, we'll be working with the Deer Path Inn on something called Prohibition Nights, where we will have mocktails and cocktails from the 1920s. So there's a lot going on, and one of the things I've really enjoyed is developing this sort of collaborative arrangement that we've got with various institutions, because one of the best ways to pull people in is to have them have more than one thing to do. So the goal is to really reach beyond Lake Forest and to start being a destination for some of these things. Just a little tidbit, if you want to stop in and see the exhibit, the bob was apparently invented here. So as we like to say, what happens in Lake Forest does not stay in Lake Forest. These are some of the lectures that are coming up. We've got a couple things that are really popular usually in this area, talking about Ginevra King, who is the woman who was the model for Daisy Buchanan in The Great Gatsby, and her friends from the 1920s. And then the other is tied to the changes in fashion that took place in the 1920s that parallel very much what takes place with every evolution in women's rights, which is the minute women move forward, they start being dressed like boys or small children. So we've got some baby doll dresses will never come back again. And so there are some really fun topics. So if you get the chance, please do come for some of our lectures. One of the other things that we're trying for the first time, and Jason participated today, is we've got an interactive installation. So there are a couple things. One is you get to use little marbles and vote for the things that happened in your 20s. Did you move? Did you live in more than one state? The other thing that you can do, if you're brave enough, is to submit a photo of yourself in your 20s and put it on our wall. And for those of you who would like to see me during my Devo era, you can come in and check out the photos. All right, then as I said, the summer will be on the socialization of vice. We're going to have a couple of things. Early on, we're going to do a Read Between the Ravines partnership, where we're going to talk about From Scorn to Socialization, which is really looking at how language changes as we move out of sort of demonizing drugs and alcoholism and move into understanding addiction. And we'll look at how that's repetitive over the course of the last 100 years. We've got a professor from the University of Wisconsin coming down for that lecture, which will be very interesting and engaging. And then the exhibit will open with a larger discussion that looks at how this area changed with the introduction of prohibition. How did Lake Forest respond? How did Lake Bluff respond? How did some of our neighboring communities respond? And then the other thing that we've got is a map lecture. So as everybody on the council knows, we are moving the historic map of 1857 of Lake Forest down to the Newberry Library. One of the things that we wanted to do was sort of honor that map and help the public understand the value of it. So we actually have the head of the map collection, Jim Ackerman, coming up to talk. The Dunn Museum will be here to talk about the public interest in maps. We will be there to talk about the map collection we have, and we will have the ever colorful Art Miller give us a historical perspective on this map specifically. So I know there's a ward meeting, but for those of you who are not in attendance, this will be a fun, free event that we have going on. Just an update on where we've been. One of the things that we had decided when we opened our doors 1.5 years ago was that we were really going to focus on making sure we were more of a tool for schools. And so we've been pretty successful. We had every Deer Path middle schooler come through. They did a tour, a scavenger hunt, and a visit. We've had Lake Forest College come in. They're using our archives for research, and they're actually designing an exhibit that will be up in the fall. Woodlands Academy came in. They did some research there, and they actually presented lectures. Country Day School art exhibit will be here at the beginning of May. Everett does a Meet the Curator, where Lori Stein actually goes to the school, and then we have regular events with Lake Forest High School students coming in to do research. So we really have expanded our ability to work with the schools and be an effective tool for them. Want to get involved? We have docent training coming up. So for those of you who are interested in history and would like to volunteer a couple Saturdays a month, this is an opportunity to get trained on how to talk about Lake Forest history. Membership, for those of you who are not members, if you join, you will find out about all these fantastic events. And then we also have, if you're interested, open opportunities to work on our committees. You do not have to join the board to help us with programming, with development, with local legends, any of our other events. So with that, I'd like to thank you, and I really appreciate the ability to come in and talk. I don't know if there are any questions. All right.
Questions, anybody?
Thank you.
Thank you. It's dramatic, the level of visibility that you've achieved in the last couple of years from what it once was. So congratulations, you've really become a major force in the community in a pretty short period of time. And always been one of the great community treasures, and only getting better. So thank you.
And actually, I'll give one last plug too. I will say, without any, context for what it may have looked like before at least relocating to the current location, the manner in which Carol and her team have incorporated technology to help tell the story and the history of our community is just really just impressive. And I think it makes the entire experience much more interactive. And so I give them a lot of credit for that. And hopefully others will have the chance to view it as well. Next, I'm pleased to introduce Vince Suarez, the general manager of the Deer Path Golf Course, to provide us and the public review of the FY20 season, and also provide an outlook for the upcoming FY21 season. And I'll just say real quick, and a plug to Vince as well, this is normally a presentation that would occur at our budget workshop, but Vince is unable to be at next Thursday's workshop because he will be receiving a prestigious award from the PGA as the Horton Smith Award as a model educator of other PGA professionals. So I know Vince is one of only 400 master professionals in the entire United States. So congratulations on the well-deserved award. We're very fortunate to have you here. And with that, take it away.
Thank you. Just wanted to spend a couple minutes today to kind of give a brief overview, kind of talk a little bit about the industry as a whole, then segment into where we are at Deer Path, go over a couple 2019 highlights, talk about our course performance, and where we're going to go in 2020. It seems like every time I stand up here, I'm talking about how rounds are down nationally, and that hasn't changed. Rounds continue to drop on the national level. In 2000, we had 518 million golfers in the United States. In 2019, we have 432 million golfers in the United States. In the Great Lakes region, the percentage is down 7.7% of golfers in 2019 on a year-over-year basis. So nationally, rounds continue to kind of plummet in the U.S. and really in the Chicagoland area. And if we look and kind of take a look at Chicago as a whole, back in 2016, rounds were down 1.9% year over year. 2017, rounds in Chicago were down 3.4% year over year. In 2018, they were down 6.1% year over year, and rounds are expected to be down last year, the year we just finished, 2019, about 1% year over year in Chicago. So rounds in Chicago continue to kind of plummet as well. I bring that up because at Deer Path, rounds continue to kind of go up. We're bucking the trend at Deer Path Golf Course. And a lot of that has to do with the renovations that the city, you all, Chuck and Sally, the renovations that have been put into the club, the continuous cart paths, the drainage, the golf carts, the patio renovation, all of those projects that have been completed in the last 3-4 years have shown significant return in the form of revenue and rounds, and you'll kind of see that a little later in the presentation as well. I am very excited to announce that we opened the golf course yesterday. It's one of the warmest Marches that we've had since 2012. We opened for walking only yesterday. It'll kind of be a day-by-day basis based on weather and based on what we have going on there. And from a green fee perspective, we did more in one day in March in 2020 than we did in March of 2019. So very happy to report that the weather did play a factor and was a benefit for us this year, because in 2019 we had the wettest May in Illinois history. June was one of the rainiest Junes in Illinois history. September it rained 3 out of 5 weekends. October we had snow on Halloween. November it was 9 degrees on November the 11th with a normal of about 45. So finally weather has started to play in our favor. But again, back to kind of rounds. This is a slide that shows where we are at Deer Path since FY18. In the green kind of shows where we're at with Deer Path, and the orange shows where the Chicago dip would be based on that year. So Chicago, you can see we've bucked the trend based on the downturn in rounds between FY18 and FY20 in the Chicago area. Kind of talking about customer satisfaction throughout the years, and we've stood up here a couple times and talked about what we refer to as our Net Promoter Score, or NPS. NPS kind of talks about how likely somebody is to frequent your business and to recommend your business. And what we do is we send emails out to every one of our golfers following their round. They get an email the next day asking them to fill out a simple 4-question survey. And I've kind of showed this slide because it talks about our NPS throughout the years, and this goes with kind of the projects that we've done, the customer service that we've brought into the facility. And to put it in perspective, Disney and Amazon have a high NPS in the 90s. I always like to say if you have a bad time at Disney, you did it to yourself. In the 90s when you go to Disney and Amazon and the NPS. And your cable companies are usually down in the teens when you talk about NPS. Nobody ever likes calling the cable company. You spend 45 minutes on hold. Our company standard, our company goal is 70.0 on our NPS. Back in FY16 at Deer Path, we were at 38.4 on an NPS. FY19, we ended at 76.1, and we're at 76.1 right now to end FY20 at. So just a tremendous turnaround in customer satisfaction, golfer loyalty that we have at Deer Path. And I'll talk a little bit about as we go through, but a lot of that has to do with the team that we have in place, the staff members that we have in place, the renovation projects that have been done, and the investment that's been made into the club. So 2019, we've been concentrating on building customer loyalty, building golfer loyalty, and we've been doing a lot of it through some of the programs that we offer. We have our Tips and Sips, our Cleveland Wedge Clinic, our Golfer Lunch Clinics, and our Winter Clinics. And the reason these are so important is we're building the golfer to come back to Deer Path. Our Tips and Sips clinics was geared towards your working family, your working husband, your working wife that could come to the golf course after work, learn from 6 to 7 o'clock at night, have a cocktail or two while they're doing it, and making it fun and interactive. Happy to report that we had over 30 people participate in our Tips and Sips clinics in June and July, bringing in a couple $1,000s of revenue to the club. And those are all golfers that are coming back and playing on Saturdays, playing on Sundays with their families. The Cleveland Wedge Clinic is a clinic that we have with Cleveland Golf, and it's a wedge fitting. We had over 30 people come in for our wedge fitting, get fit for a new wedge, and walk out the door that day with the wedge, bringing in over $4,500 in wedge sales and another 30 people that came in through our doors. The golfer lunch clinics. We started our golfer lunch clinics in April of last year. We ran them in April and May of last year. We started off with just a simple 11 to 12 clinic with lunch afterwards. They were so popular, we added 11 to 12, 12 to 1, and 1 to 2 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we're doing the same thing in 2020 here, bringing in, I think it was about 50 people for those clinics in May and early June. And then we had our winter clinics this year, which we did over at Waveland. Greg Baton, our head golf professional, handled our winter clinics just to keep the golfer interested, swinging, and coming back to the facility. So building golfer loyalty is something that is going to pay dividends as we move forward with rounds and with revenue. This is a slide that just kind of talks a little bit about our junior program, our player development. We run our Discover Golf program and our junior program at Deer Path. Everybody's heard about this in the past. This is a program that brings in usually around $300,000 plus annually to our revenue side at Deer Path. We are the industry leader when it comes to junior golf. There are very few clubs in the Chicagoland, in Illinois, or in the U.S. that can produce the amount of junior golf that we produce at Deer Path. And we're building our next generation of golfer. We're building the kids that are going to come back and be our members, that are going to be our patrons, and are going to frequent Deer Path as they get into their young adult, their adult, and their older ages. And youth development, again, we're building up those kids. We're making sure that their confidence, that their skill levels are there, and that they have great attitudes. So we're really molding the kids, both young boys and girls, to get to that next level. And of course, we're growing the game as we do it. So this year's junior golf program, we're looking to have some additional things with junior golf this year, but looking for just another great season. So some things that have been leading the way to kind of gear towards how we got where we got this year. Of course, our Net Promoter Score. Talk a little bit about the staff. The staff is a big part of this. We've got Greg Baton, our head golf professional. Chef Z, anybody that's ever eaten at the club knows Chef Z and the food that we put out at the golf course. Wonderful chef, great food. F&B side has seen some tremendous gains over the last couple years. Coach, we call him Coach. He's our starter. He's our ranger. I think everybody that in Highland Park and Deerfield and Lake Bluff has had coach their kids at some point along the way. And he's a fixture out there, and people just adore him. Pat, who works outside service for us, he's been with us for over 20 years on outside services. So this is the team that is building that customer service, that is building that golfer loyalty, and that took it from 36.1 to 76.1, and took the customer service ratings from 8.5 to 9.4, and they have really done a fabulous job in doing so. Outing retention. Happy to report that 95% of our outings have rebooked year in and year out, and that has not changed. The Lake Forest Swim Club, the East Lake, the Lake Bluff Lions Club, the Mike Borkowski outing, the Lake County Juvenile Officers, the Lake County Farm Bureau, and the Joey Dimmick outing. A lot of these outings that we've brought over from other clubs. They're doing it because of the golf course, they're doing it because of the staff, and they're doing it because of the availability on the food and beverage side with the patio. So again, I thank you for investing in that patio, for building that patio, because it's helping to bring golf outings in, it's helping to bring rounds in. Our new outings for 2020, we booked Elko Mutual. They were formerly at a competitor of ours, and they came over to us, and they were very upfront. They said, we're coming to you because of all the great things that we've heard have been happening at Deer Path, that the food is outstanding, the patio is wonderful, and the golf course is there. And so they brought their golf outing over this year. Utilization that we have, your utilization on the weekends is 97% from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. And our utilization during the week is 55%. Just unheard of utilization both on the weekends and the weekdays. Capital investments. One of the things I talked about already, the capital investments that have been put into the facility have really spurred rounds and have really spurred the revenue. The continuous cart paths, allowing us to run carts when we would normally not be able to. The drainage, allowing the water to recede from the golf course much faster following heavy rain events. It doesn't get rid of it altogether, but it does remove the water much faster following those rain events, which allows us to get both walkers out and the carts out on the continuous cart paths. The golf carts themselves, you know, we would have golf carts that would go down 2-3 times a day. We'd be running golf carts out to golfers because our golf carts just couldn't make it even 13 holes. So to have the ability to have the golf carts there, we thank everybody for that. I know the fundraising committee just worked their tails off to get those, and we really thank them. The patio, I've talked about it already. The outings that we've been able to bring in with that patio, these golf outings are coming because they have availability to have their dinners, they have their lunches, and have places to go. And of course, the city partnership. Chuck and Sally are wonderful to work with, support the golf course 100%, and it's a great partnership that we have with the team there. So where does that put us on a perspective and a financial performance? Happy to report that our year-over-year EBITDA is up $85,000 from last year. And we are up from $17,000 EBITDA in FY17 to being somewhere in the neighborhood of $160,000 to $180,000 in FY20. We'll end the year EBITDA-wise FY20. And the things that have done that, the memberships, the pricing, the dynamic pricing, being able to fluctuate our pricing, the permanent tee times, again, 97% utilized on weekends, on weekend mornings. We're booked from 6 a.m. to 9 o'clock on Saturdays. I think we have one tee time open. Continuous cart paths, the drainage, the golf carts, and the patio renovation. All of those things have started to pay off on the financial performance. So where are we going in the future? I'm sure some of you have seen this. This is what we call the lawn. This is the next venture that we have at the golf course. A 30,000 square foot bent grass putting green, working towards construction on this at some point in the future. This is the game changer for the short game area. This would be able to have continuous junior golf, continuous golf outings, have a whole nother revenue source at the club. And for those of you that play golf and are familiar with the Punch Bowl out at Bandon Dunes or some of the other facilities, Pinehurst, Erin Hills, St. Andrews, this is basically the same thing. Pinehurst, Bandon Dunes, Erin Hills, all major golf destinations, and Lake Forest. And that's what we're looking to put in next. Still to come in FY21, we're going to expand our clinics, we're going to expand our teaching programs. It's the future that we're trying to build, and it's bringing golfers into the facility. We're going to have additional fitting days. We've already booked 2 additional fitting days with U.S. Kids. We have a $300,000 kids program. Now we're going to have fitting days for those kids and offer them U.S. Kids clubs at an affordable price so that they can come in and parents can buy those clubs before they have their junior golf lessons. We have an enhanced e-marketing platform, Easy Engage, that we've already rolled out. Our emails are better looking. They link to our websites a little easier. We have a technology upgrade that's coming in. We're going to upgrade our POS systems. We're going to continue our best-in-class service. We're going to continue our best-in-class food and beverage offerings. And of course, we're going to enhance our non-golfer programs. And some of the non-golfer programs that we've done some work with the local Cub Scout organizations. They actually spent some time at the Comfort Station last October and, you know, had some s'mores out there and played some games out on the 13th fairway and our movies on the patio. So enhancing some of those non-golfer functions that we do to bring some of the other families into the club. Any questions?
Alderman Beidler.
A couple of comments. The first one I would say, and I know, I think everyone who knows Vince and knows the golf course would agree with this, but when you talked about the quality of your team, the first person on that team that we would always reference is you. And you've done a terrific job leading this organization. It's been my pleasure for the last few years to work with Vince as we've been doing some fundraising to make some of these projects possible. But it would be hard to overstate the value that you've brought to the course. And I think, it's a team, I know that, but because you're a good leader, you've been able to build that team and keep it. And your excitement about every aspect of this. I've been there a couple of times on incredibly hectic days where Vince is serving food and I think maybe cooking as well. I mean, he pretty much, now, you're probably doing stuff on the
You
greens
don't
too.
want to have my chicken wrap, though.
Listen, all I can say is, this is somebody where there's a job to be done, he does it, and it just makes it more fun for everybody. I mean, the game itself is a pleasure, but to have a staff that's so agreeable and everybody is so enthusiastic. Now, look at the difference in those ratings is, a lot of us just think metrics are divine, and then those are the best, when we can really sort something out that way. I would want to mention, and it's been great when you do a fundraising project like this. We've been doing it kind of as we go, so there have been interesting things all along the way. The Comfort Station. Now, for some of you on TV and some of you, the idea of s'mores at a comfort station might seem odd. And just to be clear, what the Comfort Station is indoor bathroom facilities at the halfway point on the golf course. And you think, well, what's so novel about that? In fact, this is novel for Deer Path. We didn't have that before. We did not have indoor facilities. It's an absolutely spectacular spot. You can see it's very beautiful. It's beautifully designed. It's very beautiful, and it actually is incredibly welcoming space. And there is space other than the bathrooms that you can go into the building and be comfortable and have s'mores. So hopefully I look forward to a s'more at the Comfort Station. But it's wonderful, and I think that's one of the confirming things about the golf course. I mean, the cart paths are great. The terrace is lovely, but this is you can see it. You can this is great. I would mention, you mentioned the next venture being and you described it as the game changer for the short game area and how unique it's going to be for a course like us to have this. I want to be clear that everybody understands there are still the official fundraising ends this year for the golf course, but there are still definitely fundraising opportunities. So I don't want anyone to think that you've missed your chance to participate, because we want full participation from anyone who is interested in doing so. This is it would be a contribution through the Parks and Rec Foundation. It is a tax-deductible contribution. And there's still opportunities there.
Yes.
So just so you know that. I love that I always love it when you come at the March budget meeting, Vince, but this is great because it gives us a chance to talk to a few more people, and we're videoed here, so people who happen to be at home watching us got to hear all the good news too. So thank you for all you've done, and for really, I was just, this is completely anecdotal, but I happened to be with somebody in Chicago recently. This is the first time this has ever happened, and he said, well, you live in Lake Forest. He goes, I'm an avid golfer, and I thought, that's an interesting, where is he going with this? And he goes, and my absolute favorite course to play in the Chicagoland area is Deer Path.
Oh, that's
And I
great.
was like, well then, and he goes, it's easy to get to, it's fun to play, you've made it better and better each year, and so this is kind of a random person I was with in Chicago. So keep it up.
We will.
That's what I'm saying.
We will.
Keep it up.
Thank you. Other comments?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to Kemper Sports. You guys really have done a great job. And Prue, I also wanted to thank you and Tim Newman. Prue's going to be stepping down in May here and has done an amazing job. It's kind of spearheading the fundraising. And just the energy that you bring to this update and this topic is really value add and been helpful to the community, because that asset really needed to be revitalized. And it's an enterprise fund, so we try to get to break even, but you got to put some capital into it, and the private and public partnerships are really what made it work. And Prue with Tim Newman really were special to take it on and to get it to where it is today, so thanks.
Alderman Rommel?
As a confessed non-golfer, I have to say I really have always enjoyed the new amenity at Food and Beverage and that outdoor patio, and I'd like to put a plug in for non-golfers to use that facility. It is like one of the top 2 places in Lake Forest to go for lunch. You can't beat the view, the patio, the food is wonderful. I don't even know, are you open year-round or for food and beverage?
No,
or-
we're open typically during the season. So chef just started back on board, so we should be back open for lunch in the next week or two.
Well, it's not to be missed and I would encourage people who are in town to have their lunch meetings there or their lunch gatherings there, because it is a spectacular, wonderful, wonderful place.
Thank you.
And very inviting even for those of us who are
Good,
non-golfers.
I'm glad you enjoy it.
Other comments? Just to put a plug in for the taxpayers here, as recently as 3 years ago, we were subsidizing the golf course to the tune of $250,000, and in 1 year, over $300,000. That subsidy is down well under $100,000 at this point, and projections going forward are even half of that. So that's where this all ends up benefiting everybody in Lake Forest in providing a fiscally responsible and still very high quality and constantly improving quality of experience. So thank you very much. It was rather controversial when we decided to bring Kemper in, and it has been an unqualified success. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Thank you, Vince, and congratulations again on next week's recognition. And then one last very brief item, in light of, the global fears regarding the spread of the coronavirus, I have asked Fire Chief Pete Siebert to provide just a quick update on communications that the city is having with various partner agencies should the surrounding and local area be affected, and perhaps he may also provide just some general advice to the public. So, Pete?
Thank you. Honorable Mayor Pantaleon, members of council, I'm glad to be up here tonight, and not the most fun topic to talk about, but everybody's been watching it in the news. So my main takeaway tonight, I want everybody just to have a good resource of where to go to get the knowledge. We all can hear the varying stories on different news outlets, and to get the trusted information, I believe Susan's done a great job on our city website. I pulled it up here just to show, what should you know about the coronavirus. So right off the bat, when you come to this, it has a list of links there for Northwestern Medicine, Lake County Health Department, the Illinois Department of Public Health, and CDC. So all of these are links to websites. So going from local to larger, starting at the hospital, they can keep us updated of what's going on in our community. And each one of these websites, I'm not going to visit each one of these here in front of you today, has a link to the partners you see there that are referring you to the next level of authority. So Lake County would then give us the local view of the county area, and then with the IDPH showing us, Illinois as a snapshot, and eventually for large scale, as you all witnessed, the hand sanitizers coming in, the CDC with their posters, are all pretty much giving us the same message right here. If you see those bullet points, we're avoiding close contact with people who are sick, covering our coughs and sneezes for sure, throwing away any tissues after you've used them, avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth, which if you watch videos of people doing, they do it quite a bit. And cleaning down is one of the best things. If we're killing that with a disinfectant, we're killing that virus out there. And then stay home when you're sick. Don't come to work and spread it around. I've had that message to my staff many times. And one of the biggest ones that we've preached at the fire department forever with our EMS service is washing our hands with soap and water. On a local level, I know there's been concerns of what we're doing differently. We're really not doing anything differently at this point. We haven't had any major scares in our local area. We do have, at the very start of it, our dispatch center. They have emergency medical dispatch, people that are trained to ask questions. They'll ask, did you travel out of the country if you're having a respiratory illness? Those are all things that will kind of heighten our senses, and we'll take higher precautions if we feel that are necessary. One of the biggest things we see people walking around with masks, our biggest things we do in the ambulance with somebody with a respiratory issue is we put a mask on that patient, so that protects our people. Other than that, we're following all the recommendations of the CDC and the IDPH, and we're monitoring it closely. If there's any changes, I think the city will be diligent about getting that out and getting the message to people. For those people that don't have internet access, they have phone numbers for hotlines there, but I would say these websites are your best source for information. They're going to be unbiased, and they're going to not be following the trends of the news agencies. I just had that brief message. If you guys have any questions, I'll do my best to answer.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Okay, thanks for the update.
Thanks, Pete. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Jason. The next item on our agenda is committee reports. We don't have any of those today. Next item on the agenda is opportunity for citizens to address the city council on non-agenda items. Would anybody from the audience like to address the council on anything that is not on our agenda tonight? Okay, seeing none, next item is items for omnibus vote consideration. We have 7, so bear with me as I read them. Number 1 is approval of the February 18th, 2020 City Council meeting minutes. Number 2 is approval of the check register for the period January 25th to February 21st, 2020. Third is approval of a Parks and Recreation Board recommendation to approve annual tree purchasing in the Forestry Department fiscal year 2021 budget. Fourth is approval of a Parks and Recreation Board recommendation to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Mariani Landscape for grounds maintenance services at Forest Park in the park's fiscal year 2021 budget. Number 5 is approval to purchase a Redexim Sandmaster 1600 for the parks section from Redexim Turf Products in the amount of $60,468.33. I'll just stop here and editorialize a bit on that, since that is a device that injects sand into the turf, which dramatically improves drainage, and is something we've hired outside contractors to do for us in the past, or something similar. The cost of doing Town Line Park when we did it 7 or 8 years ago was roughly the cost of the machine. So we've decided that there's enough need for this that this is now something we're going ahead and purchasing. Number 6 is award of a bid in the amount of $38,985 with a 10% or $3,898 contingency to Midwest Power Industry, Inc. for the Lake Forest Water Treatment Plant Emergency Generator Radiator Rebuild. So that's for the generator backup for the water plant, so that if there's a power failure, we still have water. Number 7 is award of a contract in the amount of $342,100 with a 10% or $34,210 contingency to Reef Contractors and $25,000 to PGM Architects for project management for the fire department locker room renovation, which has not been renovated since the 1960s when it was built. Are there any, that's the last item, are there any of these that any member of the council would like to remove or take separately? Alderman Bushman.
Could I have clarification, not asking it to be removed on item number 3? Maybe Chuck Myers could address the question. In terms of the tree replacement, I'd be interested in knowing where we are on the emerald ash borer program and problems. And I know we had a treatment program. We've removed some, but we left some green ashes there. Any update? I haven't seen much in the news on that. And are some of these trees intended to replace the ash?
Yes, some of them are. Overall, we're pretty far along with our public trees. So the trees in the parkways that we've taken out already, we've replaced a lot of them. So we're in pretty good shape there. Of course, many homeowners in residents of Lake Forest still have a lot of ash trees. So we're still, consulting on that kind of thing and helping where we can. So we're doing well, I would say. There are some trees that we still treat. We initially started to treat to mitigate the losses so that we could slow the loss down. We're taking some of those trees out of treatment now, so we're slowly going to be probably seeing the result of that, and that will be death to those trees as well. So we will be dealing with more trees, but we're at a point now where we're able to handle it, and it's part of our regular flow of tree removals. And also, these trees, this money is for all tree replacement. So for years, we've been dealing with Dutch elm disease and a lot of other things that happen to trees. So as of right now, the emerald ash borer trees, it's kind of just part of the bigger program. So it's been, most of those trees have been taken care of. You'll still hear about it from time to time, but we're kind of over the hump on it.
But those that are still in the public right of way, you'll just not plan any further treatment of them, and just over time, if, once they need to be replaced, do so.
Right, and there are some people that are seeing results now that the big wave of EAB has gone through. Most of the quarantines are gone across the U.S. now. They've pretty much decided that it's pretty widespread. So now they are starting to see some better circumstances with even the trees that have been treated. There's not as many ash borers around, so it is getting better. So some of those trees that we take out of treatment, we may get lucky on. They may do pretty well.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, I'd entertain a motion to approve the omnibus agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Beidler?
Aye.
Alderman Morris?
Aye.
Alderman Notes?
Aye.
Alderman Rommel?
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack?
Aye.
Alderman Kashkarian?
Aye.
Alderman Moreno?
Aye.
Alderman Bushman?
Aye.
8 yea, 0 nay, motion carries.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is ordinances. We have one tonight. It is the consideration of a recommendation from the Plan Commission in support of adoption of an update to the comprehensive plan as it relates to the Route 60 entrance corridor and surrounding area. This is the first reading, so there will be some opportunities to have some give and take on this. So I'm going to turn it over to Kathy Cerniak to present the recommendations from the Plan Commission and a long series of public meetings and community and citizen input. So,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is the second phase, the second chapter of the comprehensive plan update that is coming before you. Last October, I think it was, you approved the Waukegan Road Settler Square update for the chapter that related to that area. I'd like to talk about a few things tonight. Just review, probably not for the last time, but what is a comprehensive plan? What is it and what is it not? I'd like to spend just a few minutes talking about the 2001 Route 60 corridor comprehensive plan. That update was directed, I think by then, Mayor Howard Kerr. I want to talk about the update process to date for the chapter that is now in front of you. Want to highlight some of the key topics that were raised by members of the public, by the working group, by the Plan Commission, either verbally at workshops or in letters, and how those were responded to. And then I'm going to, at a high level, review the draft update, talk about the vision, the strategies for achieving the vision, and then the opportunity areas. And then finally, I will review the recommendation that comes to you from the Plan Commission. Comprehensive plan does not. It does not mandate a specific land use. It does not mandate a specific development plan. Comprehensive plan is not zoning, and the comprehensive plan does not change zoning. It may initiate discussions about changes to zoning for particular properties in the future. It may initiate discussions about amendments to the zoning code itself, but the comprehensive plan itself does not do either of those things. The comprehensive plan does not take away private property rights, and the comprehensive plan, importantly, does not prevent a developer or a property owner from coming forward with a proposal for a particular site that is not consistent with the comprehensive plan. It certainly may make the discussion a bit more complicated or more difficult. A comprehensive plan is intended to articulate a vision for the future, looking out 5, 10, 15, often 20 years. The last complete update of the city's comprehensive plan was done in 1998. There have been a number of amendments since then, but it hasn't been looked at as a whole. The comprehensive plan is really intended to set realistic expectations for property owners, for residents, to give a sense at the outset of what the community has talked about for a particular area. The comprehensive plan establishes a framework that should be used by boards and commissions, that should be used by the council, not only for land use decisions, but also for decisions about infrastructure, decisions about policies, decisions about capital investments. So looking back to 2001, there was significant development happening in Conway Park at that time. A number of office buildings had been completed, the area was annexed, and fully within the city's jurisdiction, and the concern that initiated the update in 2001 was that too much was happening out there, or that too much could happen out there. So the 2001 comprehensive plan really focused on slowing things down a little bit, particularly on some of the sites that had not yet been developed. There were a number of properties in play at that time. There was discussion about what today is the Willow Lakes property. There was discussion about the Amberley Woods 40-acre site. There was discussions about the 70-acre property owned by the Stewart family. And there was overall concern about traffic, about intensity of overall development that could occur out there. So the 2001 plan, again, slowed things down, tried to encourage reducing the overall intensity of development, tried to mitigate future traffic in the area. There was encouragement back in 2001 to look at transportation options. We did not yet have a shuttle. We did not, at that point, have some additional trains, which we have today. In 2001, there was discussion about pedestrian and bicycle connections. And in a minute, I'm going to talk about some of the things that have been achieved that were anticipated in 2001. There was a directive or a vision to preserve additional open space in the area, to develop park and recreational facilities, and to create a greater connection between that area and Lake Forest as a whole. That's a piece we heard quite a bit about in the recent discussions, really making it feel like when you come over that tollway bridge, you're somewhere, you're in Lake Forest, you're not just on a state highway. So just very quickly, this is the plan from the 2001 plan that was adopted. Just to orient you, this is Route 60, this is Field Drive. Just very quickly, some of the development that has taken place. This, I believe it's about a 50-acre parcel. It was then known as the Dalich property. That property was proposed, that was another property that was in play at or near that time. That property was proposed for development with Costco and several hundred residential units. Since that time, as you all know, that property was developed with the city's municipal services building, and more than half of the property is preserved open space that is now in the ownership of the Forest Preserve. This property in this area is now developed with additional playing fields as part of the Bears' continued enhancement of their site. The Amberley Woods parcel, after the 2001 plan was adopted, an overall plan for that site was approved. The northeast corner of the property was approved for 2 condominium buildings, the southern part for 24 single-family residences, which were called courtyard homes at that time, and the northwest corner was approved for development with 2 office buildings, and the existing residence at that time was approved for adaptive reuse. This 70-acre parcel that at that time was owned by the Stewart family was designated for 700,000 square feet of additional office in that area, bringing with it at the city's requirement of 4 parking spaces per 1,000, or the office tenants' often desire of 5 spaces per 1,000, bringing with it 28,000 to 2,800 to 3,500 parking spaces in that area. This today, half of the property, the east half of the property is Town Line Park, and the west half of the property is Stonebridge with around 80 residential units, all in duplex configuration. Also under development is currently Willow Lake. That property is more than half built out at this point, with a ultimate total of 52 residential units on that site. So those are the major changes that have occurred. The Hyatt Place Hotel is now under construction on that site, something that was envisioned many, many years ago when Conway Park first began to take shape. So moving forward from 2001, the update process for this chapter to date has involved individual interviews, focus groups, discussions with property owners. Like the Waukegan Road Settler Square district process, a working group was formed. That working group served as advisory to staff and the consultants. And just real quickly, there were 10 members of the working group. The 11th member was former Alderman Jack Reisenberg, who served as chairman. Individuals with a variety of expertise, a variety of interests. Some members played a more involved role than others, but it was a group that provided comments verbally, by email, as the document continued to evolve. The working group had 4 meetings. After the first meeting of the working group, the first community forum was held. We had attendance of about 55 people. The attendees had the opportunity to provide written comments. They had the opportunity to provide some digital feedback using some of the exercises that we have. After the first community forum, we began to prepare a draft, and that draft routinely went back to the working group first, and then later the Plan Commission, and was reviewed and revised after each of those meetings. The proposed draft update, as recommended by the Plan Commission, is now before the council, as the mayor said, for first reading tonight. Several topics were heard often throughout the process at different levels, whether we heard them from property owners, whether we heard them from the Conway Park Owners Association at their monthly meetings, whether we heard them from residents, the working group, or the Plan Commission. We heard clearly at the very first meeting, particularly from the chairman of the working group, that we really needed to be focused on the importance of Conway Park. Not only because that area represents about 4% of the assessed value of the city, but also because that area brings in global companies. It increases awareness of Lake Forest broadly. It brings in employers and employees who ideally will make Lake Forest their home. It is a unique part of Lake Forest. We don't have corporate offices at that scale anywhere else in the community. Lake Forest doesn't have an industrial area, so that office park is really a unique and important part of the community, and that was decided a number of years ago when the area was annexed. We heard consistently that restaurants are desired in that area. We heard that from employees, we heard that from residents, we heard that from other interested parties. There was interest in a variety of restaurants. There was also interest consistently from the businesses in Conway Park in at least one hotel and perhaps more than one hotel. I think at times we heard, bring us hotels and we will fill them. There was also an interest in other businesses. A variety of businesses, not heard as consistently, but from employers and employees in Conway Park, we heard interest in service businesses. We did hear interest in having a bank in the area. We heard interest in having a gas station in the area. Again, those weren't as unanimous as we moved through the discussion, but clearly there was an interest in mix of uses. There is a lack of availability of services and goods and restaurants and food and drink in that area. And we know that at lunchtime or after work, people leave that area, and most often people leave Lake Forest to meet those needs. There was an interest in housing options. Particularly, we heard this from the Conway Park employers, who said, many of our employees commute a significant distance to get to work. And if they had more choices, if they had some rental choices, if they had housing options of different sizes, perhaps some of them would choose to live in a closer proximity, cut their commute, and perhaps then decide that once they get to know Lake Forest, they choose to stay here for the long term. We heard a surprising amount of support for bicycle and pedestrian connections. Consistently across all groups, and I think that was a surprise to our consultants. We did work with Teska and Associates. They did a lot of our individual interviews and focus groups. Significant interest in really taking full advantage of the fact that we now have a bridge that crosses over the railroad tracks. And people know, a surprising number of people know that there are trails, the Des Plaines River Trail and other trails, that they can't get to because there's that gap from Academy Drive and the tollway. So again, a surprising interest, and not only in links beyond, but also interest in links within the area, links from Town Line Park, particularly an interest in finding an easier way to get across Route 60. We heard from employees that in good weather, a surprising number cross Route 60 at lunch to walk or run. So the plan talked about perhaps are there ways that we can, we're not going to slow down traffic on the state highway, but perhaps there's a way we can provide a refuge in the median to allow people to cross half of the road at a time. Setbacks along Route 60 were a significant discussion. In 2001, setbacks were established throughout the entrance corridor area of 150 feet on both sides of Route 60. There was strong support for retaining the setbacks, but there was also an acknowledgement that if in fact we're going to look at one of the upcoming opportunity areas and encourage commercial development on that property, we need to provide visibility from Route 60. So the plan you have in front of you acknowledges that and makes the recommendation that setbacks be reduced in very limited areas when there's a high-quality site plan that proposes the preferred uses in that area. The residents in the area are very concerned about separation of traffic, and this is something interesting. I think many years ago, perhaps when we were talking about Amberley Woods, the city, I believe the Plan Commission and City Council, talked about terminating Amberley Court, not having it go all the way through to Saunders. And there was a lot of resistance to that. And now we're hearing a lot of support for looking at some kind of termination of that road so that when we have some additional commercial development along Route 60, we're not providing a cut through that neighborhood. Amberley Court is a private road. And originally the circuitous route of Conway Farms Drive was designed in that way for that very purpose, to discourage employees of Conway Park from cutting through from Everett to Route 60. Some still do, but it's not as direct, perhaps, as going down Waukegan. Buffering of residential uses was a key issue, whether that's through berming, through transition of uses, landscaping, protecting the existing residential neighborhoods and any future residential neighborhoods was important. And then there was discussion about the opportunity areas, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. Again, just high level, the plan you have in front of you articulates a vision. That vision, again, is what we want to see in 20 years. Vibrant, active, successful, a mix of uses, housing options, transportation options, high-quality development, architecture, landscaping, and pedestrian and bicycle friendly. So all idealistic. It doesn't talk about exactly how that's all going to happen, but it establishes that vision, which really is not deviating significantly from the vision that was established in 2001. The document you have in front of you does offer some strategies, again, very high level. How do we get there? Again, to achieve that vision, looking at mixed uses, looking at bringing in restaurants of different types, high-end, casual, high-end grocery stores that have ready-to-go meals for lunch or for dinner. Transportation options was, again, a significant discussion. We even had some talk about, long into the future, a light rail in the area to really promote alternative modes of transportation. There was also recognition that people using their personal cars, everyone driving to work and everyone parking, may be something that changes in the future. And there is flexibility recommended in the plan to acknowledge that if those large surface parking lots currently in Conway Park are no longer needed, then development of an outlot or two in that area, bringing food service into the park would be something that would be desirable. There was discussion about whether residential development should be brought into the park. Conway Park owners and employers felt very strongly that it's important to have residential options around the park, but that there would be conflicts with peak traffic hours and some of their security concerns bringing that residential development directly into the park. The plan recommends that development parameters be established. Again, that could look like a code amendment. And also looking at streamlined processes for developments that come in, that are of high quality, that present preferred uses, that we look for a way to move things through the process in an expeditious manner, certainly not eliminating review, but recognizing that if a strong plan comes forward, that we need to support that and move that through the processes. As I mentioned earlier, even in the 2001 plan, there was interest in making it feel like Lake Forest as you came across that tollway bridge. There was a lot of talk of giving it a gateway feel or a sense of place, but doing it in a way that isn't contrived, that really is consistent with landscape-dominant streetscapes and quality architecture. Again, aligning setbacks with specific uses, creating appropriate transitions, enhancing walkability, and addressing access issues, whether it's making it easier to cross Route 60, terminating roads so that we don't have cut-through traffic in residential neighborhoods, adding emergency access or egress points where we don't have them. And we do have one opportunity area that doesn't have adequate access right now. So looking for ways to make all that happen. Land use designations, that section is in your packet, beginning on page, I think, 26, 27, 28. I'm not going to review that, but would be happy to answer questions. Opportunity areas, I am going to spend a few minutes on. Opportunity areas really identify the areas where there remains development opportunity, identifies preferred uses, and identifies opportunities and challenges with each of those parcels. You do have an updated map that I left at your table. There were a couple numbers were switched, and our consultant made a color change, so I wanted you to have in front of you what was up here. Opportunity area number 1 is the site where the hotel is now under construction. The hotel is under construction on about 3.5 acres of a 9-acre property. So there is the opportunity for additional development on that property. It certainly could be an office building, but there also could be other opportunities. We've heard consistently from Conway Park businesses that they're interested in off-site conference rooms, off-site meeting space, because of the increased security in their building. Sometimes if they're meeting with people from outside their organization, it's easier to go off-site. And to be able to do that right within the park would be a benefit. Could a second hotel go on this property? Could restaurants? I think you'll see a theme through these opportunity areas that the options for each of these areas has really been broadened to provide flexibility, as opposed to the 2001 plan where we saw some narrowing of opportunities. Opportunity Area 2 currently is in 2 ownerships. Part of that property was given to Open Lands by a previous owner. Part of the property is in private ownership. It is a property that doesn't have much frontage on Route 60, but it really has remarkable frontage on Lake Forest Academy Lakes. And it's an opportunity parcel. Part of it certainly is designated for open land because of the donation that occurred. But the plan really encourages cooperation, collaboration, and looking at what could be on that property. Could it be a community use? Could it be a venue? Could it be residential in a density that transitions appropriately from Willow Lake to the single-family homes owned by the Academy in this area? We do know that access and getting service to that property, sanitary sewer, water, presents a challenge. And that property's been discussed for many, many years. There were efforts by the city to really engage the then property owners as we discussed the Willow Lake property, the property that is today Willow Lake, and tried to work through some access options there. So the plan identifies that as an opportunity area, but recognizes some of the challenges and really directs that if the parties are willing, that the city take a proactive role of trying to bring the parties together to come up with a future plan for that property. Opportunity area number 3, actually the owner of that property is in the audience and has been actively participating over these many months and patiently waiting over these many months as we develop this plan. This is the key parcel that was identified as a real opportunity to bring some of the amenities close to the office park that we hear are desired. Restaurants, an additional hotel, an inn, meeting space, specialty grocery store, other service businesses, and the Working Group and Plan Commission felt that this property, with its visibility, with its proximity to the office park, is crucial to preserve for the highest and best use. And it's been great to have the property owner very involved in this conversation. Opportunity area number 4 is the Saunders Road area. A number of years ago, the city, through an SSA, extended sanitary sewer and water to that area at the request of property owners. It's a series of 5-acre lots, about 15 5-acre lots. Currently, that area is zoned for 1-acre residential lots, and that area is, this plan acknowledges that that area is unique. It has a significant amount of wetlands. It also is immediately adjacent to the tollway. So could there be some moderate density residential that could be clustered while providing a berm and some protection from the tollway, some protection of and preservation of wetlands in that area? That area has some opportunities to be a use that perhaps doesn't need a high level of visibility from Route 60. And finally, opportunity area number 5. This is the southern part of Amberley Woods. As approved today, as I mentioned, that area is approved for 24 single-family homes, pretty much zero lot line. They aren't quite zero lot line. I think there's about 5 feet or so between the homes. 5 homes have been built in that area. but it was approved a number of years ago. So is that an area worth considering? Perhaps, perhaps perhaps the western end of that area, does it make sense to consider that for an alternative use? So again, the opportunity areas provide an expanded list of preferred uses and really encourage creative thought in looking at how to use these last and very valuable properties within this entrance corridor. You also have, as part of the plan, a circulation plan that really focuses on pedestrian and bicycle connections. It speaks to opportunities to enhance crosswalks across Route 60, opportunities to really take advantage, again, of the bridge that was recently constructed. Could there be some kind of a connection to the railroad overpass that could provide a connection from the north side of Route 60 to Town Line Park? Or could there be an underpass that is aligned somewhat with the creek? May have some seasonal impacts if we did that. And a long-discussed opportunity, could there be a bridge somewhere from Town Line Park to get people over to the high school? Again, it sets out some visions, some high-level goals, much as the earlier plan talked about a bridge across the railroad tracks, which ended up coming to fruition. So with that, I will summarize the Plan Commission's recommendation. Plan Commission saw the plan on 3 occasions. At their last meeting, they did vote 4-1. We had a couple of absences. 4-1 to recommend approval to the City Council. I can characterize the reasons for the nay vote from one of the commissioners. That commissioner was concerned about allowing any deviation from the 150-foot setback, was interested in exploring further having residential development within Conway Park, the office park itself, and wanted some more specifics about really looking long-term perhaps at a light rail concept in the area. The overall Plan Commission felt that those issues were appropriately addressed in the draft document. I do want to add that the 2 commissioners who were out of town at that meeting asked, even though they did not vote, they did ask me to convey to you their support for the plan as presented. So the Plan Commission recommendation before you tonight for first reading is a recommendation to approve an update to the chapter of the comprehensive plan relating to the Route 60 corridor, which includes the stated vision, the strategies, the land use descriptions, the opportunity areas, and the 2 maps. Again, this is a draft. We can certainly make changes if you choose to move this forward with first reading tonight, and we will bring it back to you in final form. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kathy. Any questions, comments from the council? Alderman Morris.
We've talked about this, but with our new sustainability committee on the city council, I think you probably have talked to Alderman Rummel about getting a chance to engage on the environmental chapter when you start to draft it, so we can kind of coordinate what we're doing at the committee as well.
Right. Can I just add to that? Yeah, when I look at this, I think that we need to maybe do a little more work, and I think you had that planned at some point to talk about stormwater management, the topographical issues that are presented here, and I'm wondering if maybe we should really take a look at the topography, where the stormwater is draining, where the low areas are, so that we have sort of a sense of where can we put more intense development and where will it negatively impact stormwater drainage. When I look at this area, it truly is an extension of the Middle Fork Savannah. I mean, that's what this area really is topographically. and hydrologically as well in many areas. It's really an extension, no matter, I mean, I know it was farmland, but it truly is an extension to the south of the Middle Fork. And it hydrologically, I believe, still is. Small portions of this are also part of the Des Plaines River watershed, tiny portion, I believe. So it would be very interesting, I think, to see hydrologically how this plays out in this whole area, so that when we are looking at further development here, we understand the hydrology of this area and the impact it will have on stormwater, on native species, on the natural environment. Even possibly a tree inventory in some of these areas. When you look at this area around Amberley Woods, some of the objections to Whole Foods had to do with some of the trees that were there. I don't know how significant some of those trees are, but it would be interesting to at least know and take some of that into consideration. So that would be what I would encourage, is at some point we take a look at this from a sustainability and an environmental perspective.
And keep in mind that there is an environmental and sustainability chapter currently in the comprehensive plan, and that too will be a chapter that we update. We did a number of years ago adopt the city's sustainability plan as an amendment to the comprehensive plan, but that would really be the area where we look at hydrology maps and probably the bigger picture. If there are certain areas, and a couple areas in the larger community come to mind, that should be preserved because they're environmentally sensitive, that would be the place where we really look at some of those issues. Many of the properties in this particular area, for instance, Amberley Woods, there is a plan in place today, and the property owner could walk in tomorrow, submit a plan, and request a permit to develop the 2 previously approved office buildings. So I think there's an opportunity to address those issues on a broader scale, and certainly as developments come in, we do require engineering plans, drainage and grading plans, we do require tree surveys, and for individual parcels, that's where we would be looking very closely at those issues specific to the property. So I don't know if that helps to address your issues.
I think it's one thing to look at it development by development. I think I would be interested in having sort of an overall picture of what the natural features are in this area. In Willow Lakes, there's a bird rookery, or certainly used to be. So some of these are pretty sensitive natural areas. This one area, which is now number 5, and this map has changed tonight from what we looked at earlier, which is fine, but it looks like this natural area in Area 5 has been expanded from what we had before. Right down there, is that open space? And I don't understand whose
This area here?
space is this?
No.
No, the open space, number 5, that green area. Yeah.
The 5 really refers to the
26 homes or something.
the southwestern corner of the Amberley property. And the green areas on there are currently preserved as part of the approved plan. But what you're asking for is an overall map of environmentally sensitive areas, whether it's significant woodlands, whether it's prairie, whether it's wetlands. That will be part of the environment and sustainability chapter, and we will do that for the whole community.
Because there's a lot of wetland in this area.
There is.
And, the minute you start developing, you're destroying wetland and you're creating stormwater issues. And I think that needs to be taken into consideration. That's why I prefaced my comment that this was the natural extension of the Middle Fork, and we know what the Middle Fork is, and the wetlands that are in there, and that's what this would, I mean, you also have the North Branch of the Chicago River coming through here, you know, which has certainly been altered, but that's why this was all wetland initially, because it's the North Branch of the Chicago River. And so I had trouble, I have to say, looking at this map without some of those natural features drawn into it. I had trouble placing where I was in the natural environment when I looked at this map. I thought it really sort of emphasized where we're going to develop things, and I couldn't do that in a vacuum without overlaying it with the natural features. So
If I may, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but maybe this helps. When I think about spaces not being at all related to real estate in any way, shape, or form, I think about them in a continuum. And I think maybe this helps, but as you're speaking, what I think about is the continuum of one natural space to the next. I mean, wildlife doesn't recognize borders. So as if even a bird flying over the earth is looking down and seeing its own runway, if you will. And I think that's one of the challenges for me, is that I'm seeing different colors and different places. It's very pretty, but it doesn't address the flow of nature.
It's absolutely all about corridors, and that's what the Middle Fork is. It's connecting corridors, so you're absolutely right. I'm done
Alderman
talking
Notes.
for a while.
I'm going to take this a different direction. Kathy, one of the things you pointed out earlier in your presentation is the city having only so much limited commercial development space left in it that really is viable, good intersections that attract traffic that a commercial developer is looking for. As I'm looking at what you've put together here, the map, there's very limited red. There's the site right on 60 next to Amberley Woods, then the hotel development north of 60. Did you consider other alternative locations to provide more opportunity to develop commercially?
There, as you noted, there are limited opportunities in this sub-area, and this is only, as the comprehensive plan comes together, we are looking at sub-areas, and we will come back and do the overall plans that identify the natural corridors, the transportation corridors. But in this corridor, there was discussion about the other opportunity areas, the opportunity areas being the developable properties. Really looking at this area, significant amount of wetlands and very limited access. Looking at this area, we know it's residential in nature, doesn't have frontage on Route 60, and that's why this area became a focus for commercial development. This particular area, there was a lot of discussion about what could that be, knowing that part of that, again, is in the ownership of open lands. There was an acknowledgement that perhaps there could be, currently the privately owned property is at the north end. Could there be a flip so that there could be some development on the Route 60 frontage, and the preserved open space is located to the north in the more environmentally sensitive area? That was discussed, and the plan allows for that opportunity. It really encourages that kind of creative discussion. Because of the challenges on that property, the plan really left that kind of as an open opportunity area, exactly as it is. And then again, as the various groups talked about Conway Park, there was an acknowledgement that perhaps the isolated suburban office parks of 20 or 30 years ago really might not be the future. And so the plan also opens up the opportunity not only to bring in the long-anticipated hotel, but also to look at the opportunity to use, for property owners to use some excess land if they determine that less parking is needed, to bring in more commercial use, whether it's a restaurant or on land that's already developed. Right now, parking spaces for office buildings seem to be very important, but Will that change in 5 years or 8 years, perhaps?
I'd like to add one comment, picking up on something Alderman Rummel pointed out. It's a little confusing because blue, the light blue on this map is all open space, all of it. And when you add the blue to the green, there's a lot of open space out here. There's a lot of room for wetlands mitigation, preservation, and we're looking at potential sort of commercial development on precisely one parcel, because the other one's already gone. The hotel is already under construction. So we're talking about, I don't know how many acres out of how many acres here, but we're really talking about one commercial site that's always been envisioned as a commercial site, has already got a master plan, a PUD, everything you would need to develop into something that, you know, I don't know that anybody thinks would be a great ad, which would be 2 small office buildings. And then you've got the site that's identified as number 2, which is, you know, the frontage on Route 60 is open lands. It's a train, you know, model train set at this point, but, and then the northern half of that is privately owned and largely open space as well right now. So we're really talking about, and potentially in the very long run, the dark blue piece there, which is the recycling center, down to the lower right-hand corner inside the light blue. So I think actually painting that blue makes it look much more intensive than what we're really talking about here. We're really talking about effectively one parcel that's already zoned and master planned and PUD'd, and then the other one that is been in play for a very long time and has some fundamental issues. So I just want to kind of put that in perspective, because that light blue is all open space. And and in fact forms a very nice corridor along the train tracks on the west side.
I would point out that Lake Forest Academy is located in this area. All of the light blue property is owned by Lake Forest Academy, but you're correct, there's a significant amount of their property up in this corner that is open space, and
then all the way along the drive is all open.
Right. In the earlier plan, this corner of the Academy property was designated for office. It is no longer designated for office, it's designated for educational use by the Academy.
Alderman Bushman.
To follow up on the question of opportunity in the area for development, and you talked about in the parking area where not knowing what the trend goes, was there any discussion about multiple level parking that would open up space for development?
There was, and there are 2 office buildings out there right now that have deck parking. There's always that opportunity. Currently, Abbott has this center building here. They have approval on the books to build identical buildings, one to the north and one to the south. Could they do that with deck parking to preserve space for a commercial use or some additional space? They certainly could, and keep in mind that the approvals that were granted a number of years ago for developments such as for the Abbott parcel may actually no longer be possible. They may need to have some additional pervious space or some additional detention. But that would all be looked at when a specific development plan comes
We
forward.
would be receptive to someone, proposing a multiple level parking in that
Absolutely.
area. Second question is the going to parcel number 2 to the east across Academy, and I'm looking at the property that fronts 60 there. I understand it's owned by Lake Forest Academy, and I think it's referred to as a faculty home, faculty village area. Was there any discussion as to whether that's viewed as a viable long-term use, or whether that's something they may want to reconsider?
The Academy was asked that question, and I do think you have a letter, you received a letter at some point, I know the Plan Commission did, from the Academy. They are very committed to their faculty housing. In fact, their faculty housing, both in this area and further back on campus, it is a significant part of the city's affordable housing. So they continue to develop more affordable housing and bring more of their faculty on site. So they are very interested in preserving the area for faculty housing, but they, along with Academy Woods, are concerned about the amount of traffic on this private road. Academy Drive is a private road that is maintained, plowed, cared for by Lake Forest Academy residents and Lake Forest Academy. So it was certainly discussed. The theory was that, or the thought was that the intensity of development would move down as you move toward the railroad tracks, and the existing faculty housing fits that. Might the Academy decide to redevelop some of that faculty housing? They might, but they are interested in maintaining that as part of their campus.
It seems as a residential area being right off of 60 and right next to the rail tracks, whether there'd be a preference maybe to go somewhere else. But one last comment, if I could. I do commend you for the process you've gone through here to put together a working group that has had a lot of expertise, a lot of diverse opinions, and to take that to the Plan Commission and now to the Council. And I think it also is a great deal of credit to yourself to provide that leadership and guidance for the process. So thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments? Alderman Beidler.
I'd like to go back for a moment to the sustainability discussion, that piece. I don't think we came to closure on that. And I noticed in the supplemental document that you sent us, what you were very clear, Kathy, about the current comprehensive plan includes an environmental chapter. The question what I would like to raise, particularly as we are in the process right now of establishing our sustainability committee, which will be, I think its charge is still being discussed, but I know it's about to start meeting as a committee, and I think we'll find it intersecting rather regularly with a number of things. Certainly, this is always something that's impacted you in community development, but I think we'll see some sort of new ways that this will come up. Here's what I'm wondering. It strikes me that of the areas that we're going to be looking at in the new comprehensive plan, this one probably has the biggest piece that has unique environmental issues. I'm thinking that on Waukegan Road there were probably some, but probably not like this, as Alderman Rummel highlights. There's some particularly dramatic issues here. I'm just wondering if, rather than having one, this is just a proposal, I'm not, just as a possibility, I'm wondering if the sustainability element should be included actually in this section rather than in the entirety. I think the way it is structured now, it's a whole sustainability piece that then breaks out as needed. But maybe this one needs it to, I guess I'm suggesting an embedded environmental piece for this section because of the unique nature of the land. It's just an idea, but I'm wondering, I realize that might delay us a little bit, but if that's such a critical piece going forward, maybe we can, and also in a certain sense, sort of model how we want that sustainability look to work. Just a thought. I don't know if that's doable, but it seems.
And just a couple responses. I think you do have some property owners who have been patiently waiting for this process to move forward. And so there is some interest in moving forward. I actually think there are other areas of the community that are certainly as important or perhaps more important as we look at what I would call the Northwest Quadrant. We have a significant amount of land west of Waukegan Road to the north of Middle Fork that is very environmentally sensitive. And having a discussion about what the future of that land should be is important, and it's important to do quickly. So certainly the environmental sustainability chapter is very important. But as Alderman Rummel said, there are linkages. To look at a hydrology map and cut it up to just one piece, we can certainly commit to trying to advance that chapter so that all of these fall into place. I would just, given the amount of time spent on this by the working group, the property owners, the Plan Commission, I would hesitate to delay this.
Alderman Rommel.
I just want to be clear, I'm not even necessarily suggesting that this be delayed as much as I would like us to take note of the significant environmental features on these parcels, put them on the map so that we know where they are, we know what's going on here. You know, without, the lakes of the Academy aren't even on this map, so there are large areas of this that really can't even be developed. And when you talk about, you know, and I did note when I was reviewing this that there is this large blue swatch here, which is educational, but I don't know what that means. Does that mean it will forever be open? No, I don't think it does. I think it means that it's owned by the Academy, and they may come forward, as far as we know, in the future with development plans for portions of that. You know, so I don't take too much solace in the fact that that's designated educational today. And certainly I agree with Alderman Notes as well, that there's very limited opportunity for commercial development, and I don't think there's any question that we've got to go ahead with this area, what is it now, 3? And some of the other stuff is really yet unknown. We don't know what's happening with Meservey. We don't know what's happening in that area. There still is no connectivity. So that chapter remains to be written. But I just think we would all benefit by understanding the wetlands in this area and the natural features.
So Kathy, this is Jim. So in 2001, I mean, this isn't the first time we've done a comprehensive plan. And so can you just give us a sense on the sustainability chapter? I mean, it comes in after, I mean, just give us a sequencing of it, and maybe it's as simple as just providing information and topography that's already been stated in the last cycle when this was done in 2001, but I don't really think there's any conflicts here, and I think we need to be really, you know, careful we're not kind of cross-purposing committees here, and I mean, I don't think there's any risks
Certainly,
here.
one way of doing a comprehensive plan, and the council talked about this, is to do the whole plan and adopt it at the end of a very long process. And the council specifically said, first, we were actually going to do the housing chapter first, but then there was some activity in Waukegan Road Business District, and that was advanced. And then we advanced this area because there was a petition before the Plan Commission. So there's no one way to do a comprehensive plan. It all needs to come together at the end. The concern about simply adding into this section a map that designates all the floodway and floodplain and wetlands, that information we would take from the county layers. And it is not, those are not delineated wetlands. It's a very high level. You're correct, Alderman Rummel. If we pull those layers, you're going to show much of this area as wetland, even some of the areas that are already developed. So I'd be hesitant to simply pull a layer from the county and show wetlands that have not been carefully delineated and identified as high quality, low quality under jurisdiction of the county or jurisdiction of the Army Corps. So I do think, I hear what you're saying, and certainly we can add language, and we can play with perhaps an additional map that provides some further delineation, but we can certainly add language that speaks to the fact that as development proposals come forward, even though we can re-emphasize it in here, that we would look at wetlands, look at woodlands, look at overall hydrology. So I don't know if that helps you in the short term, but I do hear what you're saying, and having that overall
Yeah, I'm not saying
map.
I wouldn't vote to approve this plan as it's written, but I really do think we need to understand the natural features in this area and where those wetlands are. So that we know that we have it when we're going forward and looking at this parcel by parcel as proposals come forward. I want that to be one of our considerations.
Alderman Kashgarian?
Maybe it's because I'm sitting in Alderman Reisenberg's chair, but I'm starting to grow a little frustrated with this discussion. I'm hearing some reasonable concerns expressed, but they're being expressed through a committee that's trying to figure out its purpose within our government right now. I think I'm putting trust in the process that's moved forward so far, and I don't want to get bogged down to the point where any future opportunities that may come forward, any developer or any other third party may shy away from this. And Alderman Rummel, your points are well taken, but as I was listening to the mayor speak about the open lands, and this is a far broader concept, and quite honestly, I take exception with any one parcel being more important than another. I think they're all important within the environment, whether or not it's, you know, that particular parcel number 3 or that northwest corridor or down in the southeast part of town. I think they're all important. I just don't want to see us get too bogged down. And I feel like that's the rabbit hole we're going down. And from where I am, I'm prepared to move forward with this first reading. And I would just urge us to, you know, we have a developer that's been waiting very patiently, and we've had a couple of change of plans. And quite honestly, I think the process has played out very well, and I think everybody has put in a lot of good work. But you know, I used the comment at the PW meeting, I hate to see paralysis through analysis, and I'm afraid that's the direction we're going.
I would, let me point out one thing. The purpose of this discussion is to surface some concerns and some opportunities that the council sees that maybe from our perspective at 30,000 feet might not have been quite as visible, or for lack of a better word, you know, front of mind, top of mind for the people in the working groups and so forth. So we are not required to accept this absolutely with no changes. Having said that, and so there is and that's the purpose of having a first reading and a second reading, so that there could be some input and some tweaking. And I think but that's the level I think we should be thinking about here, given the amount of work and energy and thought that's gone into getting this to this point. There should be, and there probably will be, some adjustments made between first reading and second reading. I know Alderman Bushman has submitted some sort of what I'll call minor language changes. There's an opportunity for us to do that. I don't think that this is the right venue to do that, to be sort of wordsmithing the document from the council chambers, but there is an opportunity to provide some, maybe a little shift of emphasis here or there, so that all in all, the council's hand is imprinted on this at some level. So just want to set the tone there.
And I don't mean to dismiss what you're saying, Melanie, I really don't, because I do see the value in it, but I don't want it to be a hindrance. I don't want it to bind this process up.
I don't think we disagree. I did say, I think we should go forward, and I could vote to approve this plan.
Okay.
But what I am saying is I think we need to take into consideration the natural features on this property.
Every property.
The whole area.
But this is the one that's in front of us right now.
Absolutely.
And so I don't disagree at all with what you're saying. But I do think that there's another layer to this that we can put in maybe between this reading and the next reading that will focus us a little bit more on the natural features and the natural hydrology and the wetlands in this area, so that is part of the plan going forward, and so that people who are looking to develop here, and it's not going to tie their hands, we just need to understand what areas are wetlands, what areas are significant, what areas aren't. That would be my suggestion.
I'm looking at what I think was a plan commission meeting minutes from February 12th, Kathy, and it looks like it might be already addressing what Melanie's looking for.
Yeah, this is an interesting map you've got.
Hearing this conversation, we can augment this to some extent. Again, I think we want to be careful. We don't want to simply put in a wetlands map for wetlands that have not been delineated, have not been verified. I think that provides misinformation. So I think we can do a better job of providing an additional map that identifies some natural features. I'm not sure it will do everything you want, but I do think then in the sustainability chapter, we can tie that all together. But based on what I've heard, we can certainly add some additional text and we can add some additional graphics.
I also want to make clear, Alderman Kashgarian, that when I speak, I am not speaking on behalf of a committee. I'm speaking here as an alderman. Our committee has not yet had its organizational meeting, although we do have a blueprint for it, but I don't pretend to be speaking on behalf of a committee which at this point hasn't met, just to be clear.
Any other comments from the council? There being none, I would entertain public comment. Anybody from the public that would like to speak to the council about this matter? There being none, I would entertain a motion to approve first reading,
So moved.
and this is a roll call vote.
Second.
Alderman Beidler?
Aye.
Alderman Morris?
Aye.
Alderman Notes?
Aye.
Alderman Rummel?
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack?
Aye.
Alderman Kashgarian?
Aye.
Alderman Moreno?
Aye.
Alderman Bushman?
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nay. Motion carries.
Thank you, and thanks for everybody's input here, and thanks for the patience of everybody who's been involved in this process and all the work that's gone into it. I think it's actually a great step forward. The next couple of items on the agenda, I don't think we have any content, old business, new business. Any other comments by council members? Is there any general comment anybody'd like to make about any of them? Okay, there being none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The meeting is adjourned.
That's work, yeah.